I remember that day clearly. We just wanted a different kind of weekend, you know? A bit of adventure, some nature, laughter. Nothing crazy. There were 5 of us, me, Ethan, Lena, Josh, and Noah. Friends for years. It was Ethan's idea to go to that forest. He'd seen an old post on some forgotten forum online about a trail no one used anymore. It was supposedly closed off, but he swore that was just an exaggeration. People online said the place was cursed, that people had gone missing. But like always, we laughed it off. Joked about wanting to see a ghost up close. But once we stepped onto that trail, the forest changed. I can't explain it. It wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of heavy silence that makes the air feel still. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of our footsteps on dry leaves. Maya, always the sensible one, asked if we were going too far, messing with something we shouldn't. Noah just laughed and said it was all part of the thrill, something to remember later. Lena was filming everything, like she was planning to make a vlog. At that point, it still felt fun. We hiked for about 2 hours before finding a clearing. We set up our tents, built a fire, ate. It felt like a regular camping trip. We told stories, joked around. But then, out of nowhere, things changed. The fire cracked weirdly. And right after that, we heard a sound, soft, almost like whispering. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But Lena stopped recording and asked, "Did you guys hear that?" Ethan said it was the wind, but there was no wind. The sound came from everywhere. It was like someone was whispering right into your ear, just barely loud enough to notice. We all went quiet. No more jokes. No more stories. That night, I woke up without knowing why. My heart was racing. It was warm inside the tent, but I was freezing. I unzipped just a tiny part of the flap to look outside. And I saw them, figures, standing between the trees. Not moving, just there, tall, still, silent. When one of them turned its head toward me, I froze. I zipped the tent back up slowly, curled up, and stayed there, eyes closed, shivering, not making a sound. In the morning, I told the others. They didn't take it too seriously, but I could see it in their faces. They were scared too. That's when we decided to leave. But the trail we came in on was just gone. Like the forest had swallowed everything behind us. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a forest. There was something there, something that didn't want us to leave. That morning, after the trail vanished, nobody talked much. We just looked at each other, waiting for someone to say, "Don't worry, it's this way." But none of us knew. Ethan tried to get cell signal. Nothing. Lena pulled out the camera, but she didn't seem like she wanted to film anymore. And Noah, he was different. Way too quiet. Kept staring at the trees like he was hearing something the rest of us couldn't. We decided to walk, in any direction really. The forest looked the same no matter where we turned. The ground was covered in damp leaves, and the air felt heavier with each step. Sunlight didn't cut through the trees anymore. That's when Josh tripped on something, maybe a branch, I don't know, and hit the ground hard. He got up fast, but he was pissed, started arguing with Ethan, and suddenly, the forest answered. I know how that sounds, but we heard it. The voices started again. It wasn't animal sounds. It wasn't the wind. It was words, not all at once. It was like someone whispering our names, like Noah, Lena. That's when Noah spoke for the first time in hours. He said, "They don't want to hurt us." We all froze. Who Noah? He looked up, then around, like trying to find where the voice was coming from. The forest. The voices, they just want to be heard. My stomach twisted. That wasn't Noah talking, at least not the Noah we knew. That night we didn't light a fire. We stayed quiet. Each of us in our own tent, like that would somehow protect us. But in the middle of the night, I heard footsteps, not soft ones. Heavy steps dragging leaves. Like someone, or something, walking between the tents. I held my breath. Didn't even want to blink. And that's when I heard the scariest sound of my life. It was my voice. Outside, whispering. Repeating things I'd said earlier that day, like a recording. Like the forest had heard me, and was now copying me. In the morning, Noah was gone. We searched for hours. Called out, yelled, nothing, until Ethan found something under a root. It was Noah's old recorder, the one he used to store ideas and sounds for his music. Josh hit play. The tape crackled, and then, voices. But it wasn't just Noah, it was all of us. All our voices, blended together. Like the forest had recorded everything we'd said since we got there. Disconnected words, random phrases, but with a strange rhythm, like a song made of fear. I wanted to throw it away, but Ethan wouldn't let me. Said maybe it could help us figure out what was happening, but I already knew. The forest was listening, learning from us, and now it was speaking like us too. After Noah disappeared, everything changed. The forest, which already felt strange before, now felt alive. It was like it was breathing. The trees creaked even without wind. The ground seemed to sink just a little deeper with every step. And us, we didn't talk much. Like we knew that every word could be heard by something that shouldn't be listening. It was Josh who found the first signs that others had been trapped here before. He noticed strange markings on a tree. When he brushed them off with his hand, they were names. Dozens of names carved with a knife or something sharp. Some faded with time, others still fresh. Lena found more just ahead, more names and dates. Some from the 80s, one as far back as 1962. And right there, at the base of a thick tree, was a notebook, soaked, its pages nearly falling apart. Ethan pulled it out carefully, and we managed to read a few pages. It belonged to a girl named Amanda, who had gone camping with 3 friends in the same forest. The last entry read, "It's not hunger. It's not thirst. It's like the forest is draining our will, one by one. And when we try to sleep, it speaks. And the worst part, it sounds like us." Lena shut the notebook immediately. I wanted to leave. Didn't matter where. I just wanted to walk until I collapsed. But that's when the voices came back. And this time, they knew things no outsider ever could. "Maya, why didn't you tell your mom about that night? Ethan, you lied. You knew this trail was real. Josh, she never loved you." We all looked at each other. None of that had ever been said out loud, but the voices knew. I saw the panic in Josh's eyes. He took off running. We called out to him, but he just kept yelling, "Get out of my head! Get out of my head!" We chased him, but it was like the forest swallowed him whole. Branches closed in, the sound vanished. When we got close, all we found was one of his shoes, sideways, covered in mud and blood. Lena was crying. Ethan was shaking. And me, I felt something inside me cracking. The forest wasn't trying to kill us quickly. It wanted to play with us, like a cat playing with a mouse before the kill. I looked at Ethan. He looked at me. And in that second, we both knew. This wasn't just some cursed trail. This wasn't just a legend. It was real. And worse, we weren't the first. We wandered aimlessly for what felt like hours. I couldn't tell if it was day or night anymore. The light in the forest was constant, like time had forgotten to move inside that place. It was Lena who saw the cabin, almost completely hidden by branches and moss. Small, crooked, with slanted walls and windows without glass. It looked like no one had set foot in there for decades. But still, the door was slightly open. We stepped in slowly. The floor creaked with every step. The smell was strong, rotting and damp wood. But what we saw inside made my stomach turn. Photos, dozens of them, pinned all over the walls. Some showed groups of young people like us, smiling, posing with backpacks and campfires. Others, only trees and shadows. Dark shapes that looked like faces peeking from behind trunks. Some photos had been scratched out. Faces blacked out with pen. Others had strange symbols drawn over them, like markings or seals. Ethan picked one up and froze. It was him, in a photo he never took. I couldn't say a word. In the corner of the cabin, there was a metal box. Inside were forgotten things: a flashlight, a muddy shoe, a torn notebook, and a recorder. Not the same one as Noah's. This one was old, tape style. We hit play. The tape hissed, then came a voice. It was Noah, but not just him. She lives. She listens. She repeats. But it's not imitation, it's replication. She wants to learn from us, to become us. His voice sounded emotionless, like it wasn't even him anymore. Lena dropped to her knees, quietly sobbing, repeating, "This can't be real. This can't be real." Then she showed us her arm. A symbol, the same one from the photos, had appeared on her skin, like a burn mark, but it didn't hurt. It was just there, dark, precise. I looked at my own arm. Nothing. Ethan's, too. Nothing. But we looked at each other. The forest had chosen someone. Ethan left the cabin, said he needed air. Needed to think. I stayed with Lena, trying to calm her down, telling her we'd get out, that there was still a way. I didn't know if I believed it, but she needed to hear it. And then we heard them again, footsteps, but not like before. These were synchronized, identical, and coming from all directions. I grabbed Lena and we ran. The forest felt tighter, like the trees had moved closer together. The voices whispered nonsense, mixing words we had said with things we never had. But the worst part was when I saw him, Josh, or what looked like him, standing between the branches. He smiled, but his eyes weren't his. That thing was wearing his face like a mask, and it was just the beginning. After I saw Josh's face between the trees, I knew there was no turning back. Whatever was in that forest, it didn't just want to scare us. It didn't just want to watch. It wanted to be us, to become us, to steal our voices, our memories, our stories. And the worst part, it was working. Lena and I ran for hours, or at least it felt like hours. At some point, nothing looked familiar anymore. I swear the forest was moving. The paths would shift when we blinked. The trees grew tighter, more suffocating, like they were pushing us somewhere. Ethan found us, alone, gasping for air, covered in mud up to his waist. He said he'd heard my voice calling him, but it wasn't me. Said he saw his mother in the trees, then watched her disappear. They learn, he said. They know what to say, what to show. All they need is a thought. And they know. Then he said something I'll never forget. If we don't think, they can't hear us. It sounded insane, but it made sense. The whispers always came after something intense. When we spoke, cried, remembered. So we tried to be silent, inside and out. It's harder than you think. Trying not to think makes you think. But it was that, or disappear. We moved slowly. Didn't look at each other much. Tried not to think about fear, about pain, about who we'd lost. But then Lena tripped. Fell, and without meaning to, whispered my name. Maya, and right then, the whispers erupted, like a storm. Voices layered over each other. Our words, our memories. Old laughs, fights, confessions, everything. And then, Ethan was gone, just like that. 1 second, he was right beside me. The next, nothing but a recorder on the ground. And it wasn't even his. Lena and I ran. Her body shook. She kept muttering that we were going to die there, that it was all our fault. But I didn't answer. I just ran. Ran without thinking, without looking back. And then, I saw it. The trailhead. It was there. Like it had never vanished. The forest behind us fell quiet. Too quiet. Lena collapsed, crying. But she was alive. I sat next to her. And for the first time in days, I felt the real wind. But the peace didn't last. In Lena's pocket, the recorder, we pressed play. And we heard my voice, whispering something I never said. Or maybe I did. I don't know anymore. It was like, even outside the forest, it was still listening, still learning. And maybe we never really left at all. When I accepted the job at that small school out in the countryside, all I wanted was peace. Less traffic, less noise, fewer people. Veil du Cedro seemed like the perfect place for that. Small, tucked away, surrounded by an old forest no one really talked about. At first, everything seemed normal. The students were respectful, maybe a little too quiet. But the classroom was clean, the schedule was easy. I had nothing to complain about. It wasn't until the third week that I started noticing the details. The kids acted strangely during afternoon classes. They would stare out the window a lot. Not the usual daydreaming kind of distraction. This was fixation. Always in the same direction, the forest. In their notebooks, many of them drew trees. Almost all with eyes, big, open ones, in the center of the trunks. Some with branches stretched out like arms. Others with roots shaped like hands reaching out of the ground. It was repetitive, almost obsessive. At first, I figured it was just imagination, some sort of game. Kids do that. But then I realized it wasn't just one or two of them. It was a pattern, like they were all sharing the same secret. So I started paying closer attention. The drawings varied, but the eyes were always there. Some kids refused to talk when I asked about it. Others would go quiet for long stretches, like they'd forgotten where they were. There was one girl who used to leave drawings in my desk drawer, always folded up like she didn't want anyone to see. One of them has stayed burned in my mind. It was a forest full of eyes. In the corner of the page, there was a small arrow pointing toward me. And all the eyes on the biggest tree were staring directly at the spot where I would be. That night, when I tried to sleep, I started thinking about it differently. Not as a teacher, not as an adult trying to be rational, but as someone who could feel when something wasn't right. It wasn't just superstition or imagination, it was shared. Between them, like a fear they'd inherited. Like a kind of truth that adults eventually learn to ignore. I didn't know what it was yet, but deep down, I could feel it too, something watching me. And it wasn't paranoia, it was presence. Over time, I got used to the village's routine. The days were quiet, the people polite, but there was always a sense that some things just weren't spoken about. A kind of silence no one dared to break. And the more I paid attention, the more I realized the forest was at the center of it all. The children slowly started to change. Some seemed more anxious, especially as summer began to fade. The school got quieter. The drawings multiplied, and the eyes on the trees became more detailed. Sometimes, I'd catch students staring out the same window, not like they were waiting to see something, but like something was already there. I started asking around, casually, trying to understand. But any time I mentioned the forest, the conversation stopped cold. People changed the subject, pretended not to hear, or just gave me uncomfortable looks. No one wanted to talk about it. It was one afternoon, walking home, when an older woman called me over in a hushed tone. She told me something that's been stuck in my head ever since. Every end of summer, she said, a child disappears. Sometimes two. Always around the same time, and always without explanation. There were no major search efforts, no panic. It was like everyone already knew it wouldn't help, like they'd accepted it. The following week, a student didn't show up to school. His name was Mateo, quiet kid, rarely smiled. The announcement was brief. His family said he went missing during a walk near the woods. The police did a short search, found nothing. At school, no one talked about it. Not the kids, not the teachers. It was like Mateo had never existed. But the drawings kept coming, darker, more intense. And that's when I noticed something. Many of the drawn eyes were crying, but not normal tears. It looked like sap, or something thicker, something alive. The girl who had been leaving drawings in my desk stopped coming to school for a few days. When she returned, she no longer drew trees, just eyes, page after page of wide, unblinking eyes, some split down the middle, others stitched around the edges like someone had tried to keep them from ever closing again. No one seemed to find it strange, except me, and for the first time since I'd arrived in that village, I began to wonder, maybe the silence wasn't about fear. Maybe it was about complicity. Maybe they all knew there was something in the forest, and they'd simply decided to pretend it wasn't there anymore. It had been a while since I'd slept properly. The feeling of being watched never left me, not even inside my own house. At night, the sound from the forest wasn't normal. It wasn't animals. It wasn't the wind. It was like someone was breathing way too close. Sometimes soft, sometimes louder. I started spending more time at school after hours. Not because I had to, but because I felt like I needed to. I wanted to understand. And it was on one of those late afternoons that I found an old notebook hidden in the back of a storage closet in a classroom no one used anymore. It was dusty, the pages yellowed with time. On the cover was the name of a teacher I'd never heard of. Inside, she had documented things, fragments of phrases, dates, observations, the same behaviors I'd been noticing. Kids drawing eyes, talking about living trees, hearing voices in the shadows of the forest, and the most unsettling part mentions of disappearances that matched names scratched out in the school's oldest attendance records. The last pages were nearly illegible. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, like someone had written them while panicking. The final sentence made my skin crawl. They grow up with us, and wait for the right moment to look back. After that, I started paying more attention outside school too, on my walks home, the village walls, the way the older residents looked at me, and then I saw the fence. It sat right at the edge between the village and the forest. Not tall, not sturdy. Old wooden posts, crooked, weathered, but covered in marks, carved symbols, little eyes drawn with charcoal, strips of cloth tied like talismans, and there was a line of salt on the ground. No one crossed it, not even out of curiosity. It was the girl, the one who left me drawings, who brought me there. I didn't ask. I just found a note on my desk with a single arrow drawn on it. She was waiting when I arrived, standing still, staring into the woods. She didn't say a word, just pointed, and I looked. I didn't see anyone. I didn't hear anything, but I felt it, like being stripped bare from the inside out. Like every thought I had was being studied by something enormous, ancient, and hungry. It wasn't threatening. It was assessing, observing, a kind of attention no human being should ever experience. After that day, I started hearing voices at night, children's voices, some laughing, some crying out for help, and one of them kept repeating a name, Mateo, over and over, always the same way, like a broken tape stuck on a loop. At school, the students behaved as usual, but they didn't draw anymore. Now they just sat in silence, especially in the afternoons, when the sun began to disappear behind the trees. That line of salt, it wasn't a warning, it was a boundary, and I had crossed it. I couldn't stay still anymore. The voices had become constant. The images of the forest, the drawings, the eyes, they surrounded me all the time. The silence between sounds felt heavier, like there were hidden words in the air. And I wasn't the same anymore. One night, just past midnight, I grabbed a flashlight and walked to the fence. The fog was thick and everything was damp. The line of salt was still there, but I didn't hesitate. I crossed. The forest felt alive, like it was breathing around me. The smell wasn't earthy. It was sweeter, rotten sweet, like fruit left out too long. The trees behind me seemed to close in. I walked slowly, trying not to think, but the fear made my heartbeat too loud to ignore. It didn't take long to find a path, half buried under leaves and twisted branches. I followed it, even though I knew I shouldn't. Inside it wasn't dark. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in narrow shafts, painting moving shapes on the ground. And there, in the middle of a small clearing, I saw them. The eyes, they weren't on faces. They were in the trunks, in the branches, on the ground, on leaves that turned by themselves just to look at me. They didn't blink, just stared, all of them focused only on me, each one slick with a wet, living shine. At the center of the clearing was a notebook, soaked through but still intact enough to read. It was Mateo's. I flipped through the pages. Everyone was blank except one. And on that page, a single line, "You weren't supposed to look." My legs nearly gave out. That's when the voices started again. But this time, they weren't whispers. They were memories, mine, sentences I'd said in passing, laughter from my childhood, cries I hadn't let out in years. All of them repeated back to me, broken, scattered, cold, as if something was trying to replay pieces of me. Not to understand them, just to own them. I ran, didn't look back. The forest felt tighter with every step, the eyes closer, the air heavier. But somehow I made it out. Outside, the sky was just beginning to lighten, and there she was, the girl who had left me all the drawings, standing, silent, watching. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just turned around and walked away. Before she disappeared down the road, she dropped something. A page, another drawing, 2 trees, and between them, a pair of massive, unblinking eyes, no pupils, just wide and open. The next day, another child didn't come to school. No one asked about her. I handed in my resignation, packed my things, left the village by the end of the week. I didn't look back, didn't say goodbye. Now I live far away, another state, another life. But sometimes, when the wind brushes against the window late at night, I still hear them. And a part of me knows they're still watching.